There are people who walk into a room and are immediately applauded, and there are people who walk in and get laughed at before they even speak. Today's story is about a girl like that. She arrived wearing a faded jacket and carrying an old rifle as worn as her memories, and the whole world laughed in her face as if she were a joke born to fail. But just 10 shots, 10 breaths, and the world fell silent. The car came to a stop with a soft screech from its worn-out handbrake. Riley Quinn didn't turn off the engine right away. She sat still in the driver's seat, both hands resting lightly on the wheel, eyes quietly fixed on the building ahead, where the cold, metallic gleam of the Strathmore Elite Range caught the afternoon sun like a polished weapon. That place did not welcome people like her. She knew that the glass and steel building rose in the California suburbs like a fortress of perfection, every edge crafted to make those who entered bow their heads. Riley did not bow. She stepped out of the car, her moss-green jacket, faded from years of wear, fluttering gently in the breeze. In her right hand, she gripped a vintage Mungarond, a wooden rifle slung over her shoulder, looking like a relic that had survived a forgotten war. It once belonged to Major Declan Quinn, her father, and now it was all she had left of him. "I'll carry it to the end, Dad," I promised. She drew in a deep breath. The scent of dust, worn leather, and aged steel clung to her like an invisible cloak. Others might see a country girl, but she knew exactly who she was. As Riley walked toward the main gate, her footsteps echoed softly against the black stone floor that gleamed like glass. The crowd inside couldn't see her yet, but a few people outside had begun to notice. From afar, she looked no different than a supply clerk delivering ammo crates. Logan Price, the doorman, slicked back hair, uniformed suit with a name tag stitched in silver thread, squinted as she approached. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked, dragging his voice like a wire across the concrete. Riley didn't answer. She simply raised a VIP pass, old, the edges frayed, but the scan code still intact. Logan glanced at it and smirked. "Saipi lanes aren't for people who got lost," he said loudly, making sure the nearby group heard. Laughter erupted. A young man in a Balenciaga tracksuit, Chase Morgan, the son of a major investor, leaned on a stone column and called out, "They letting janitors shoot now? Someone grab her a window rag." Laughter echoed like applause in a cruel play. "Don't react," Riley whispered to herself, her eyes steady and sharp. "Silence is a bullet unspent. Their words will be fuel when my finger finds the trigger." Logan raised his hand to block her. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't a place just anyone can walk into. Do you have an appointment with someone?" "With myself," Riley replied, voice low, calm, but each word cut clean like a blade through frost. He scoffed, but when he scanned the card, the screen flashed blue. "Access granted, Saipi." At that moment, the air stalled for half a second. The people who had just laughed now glanced at each other, confused. Logan clenched his jaw, stepping aside reluctantly, like being forced to yield to an unnamed force. "Go on, but I guarantee this is a mistake." Riley walked in, unhurried. The laughter behind her still hung like an oil slick on the water, slippery and foul. She didn't turn around, didn't respond. "Laugh," she thought. "Every smile today will freeze after 10 pings." Inside the Strathmore Elite Range, the air seemed filtered through a precision machine, cold, clean, and expensive. Transparent glass walls reflected LED lights, and the leaderboard glittered with gold-lettered names. Senators' sons, Olympic athletes, heirs of weapons, empires. Every name was a pedigree. And among that world, Riley Quinn looked like a typo on a polished financial report, misplaced, uninvited, and unwelcome. The moment she stepped into the main lobby, she could feel the eyes turning, not in admiration, but as if assessing a flawed item that had slipped into a VIP showroom. "Oh my God, who let the museum exhibit in?" The voice of Sienna Ray rang out, a perfect blend of mockery and aristocratic pride. She stood with a group, golden curls bouncing, a high-end rifle scope dangling from her neck like a piece of designer jewelry. "That coat probably fought in World War I," Brandon Shaw added with a smirk, tilting his head. "Or is she starring in a documentary called Lost Weapons of History?" Laughter exploded, this time from all corners. Phones lifted, cameras pointed at Riley. Livestream captions flooded the screen. Recycled trash entered the VIP zone. "Someone please get her a pushcart. Who even is she? Fake the sixth alert. They want to watch me break." Riley thought, "But I only need to stand tall." A massive screen in the lobby zoomed in on her face. Tanned skin, tied back auburn hair, amber eyes that didn't flinch. Far away, in a sterile hospital room, Mrs. Quinn, Riley's mother, held a trembling iPad. She watched as her daughter was ridiculed in front of thousands. But Riley, not a single frown, only her grip on the old rifle tightened. Dr. Thaler, Miranda Steele, Strathmore's head instructor, stepped out of her office, wearing a sleek suit and glittering diamond earrings. She seemed engineered to speak only at calculated moments. "Excuse me," she said, intentionally loud enough for the live stream mic to catch. "You're in the wrong place. This is Strathmore, not a community college or local shooting field." She nodded slightly at the Mungarand on Riley's shoulder. "That thing belongs in a museum, not here." Silence fell like the overture to a public execution. Then a voice from the crowd. Avery Lennox, fur-lined jacket, blood-red lips, waving a paper. "You forgot your last score sheet." She tossed it at Riley's feet, the page slicing the air like a slap across the face. "Not a single word. Just wait until it begins." Just as Riley entered the central training area, a sharp whistle sliced through the metallic air. "I thought Strathmore had higher standards than this." Jackson Whitmore. He stood in the lobby's center like a cinematic lead, lit perfectly by overhead beams. His tailored black suit hugged every muscle, hands in pockets, a custom sniper rifle slung casually behind him like a badge no one dared challenge. He didn't need an introduction. Everyone knew who Jackson was, and Jackson knew it too. "Let's try this," he said, stepping toward Riley. His voice echoed through the building's live stream system. "A one-on-one. I shoot. You shoot. 10 rounds. Whoever scores higher wins." He stopped just before her, chin lifted slightly, a cold half-smile curling his lips. "If you win, I'll leave Strathmore. My name was erased from the golden board, from the training elite, and from every sponsor. But if you lose," a pause. The crowd held its breath. Riley didn't blink. "You leave, for good, and we forget this ever happened." One guy chuckled. "She'll quit before touching the trigger." Brandon Shaw whistled, aiming his phone's camera at Riley. His caption read, "Fastest takedown of the century, 10 seconds. Riley stared straight into Jackson's eyes. "All right," she said. Her voice was soft as a breeze. No hesitation, no fear, just calm. So steady, it chilled the room. "They think I'm stubborn, but this isn't stubbornness. It's a certainty, and certainty doesn't need to shout." Jackson tilted his head. Maybe he expected pleading, or at least a flicker of doubt. But Riley just stood there, silent, as if he were a breeze passing through, not worth resisting. Sienna Ray, from behind, called out, "You should ask yourself what you're doing here before agreeing to shoot. Strathmore isn't a summer camp for misfits, or are you filming a wartime documentary?" Brandon added, zooming in on the Mungarand with his camera. Fine, Riley thought, tightening her grip on the strap. If this is a performance, I'll let the bullet close the curtain. The air thickened, tense, waiting. The live stream ticked over 29,000 viewers, climbing every second. 3 p.m. Lane 6 and 8. Live duel. This will be her last time here, someone commented. Jackson nodded, turned his back, tossing one last line over his shoulder. Get ready, sweetheart. We're sending you back to the museum. Riley said nothing. She simply walked toward lane 8. Slow, steady. Daddy's girl. His voice echoed in her memory. When the world mocks you, let your shot speak. Let the bullet speak for you. The inner training zone of Strathmore Elite Range resembled a museum fused with science and tactical engineering. Everything from the bulletproof glass panels and cold metallic blue LED lighting to the digital control boards measuring every fractional deviation of a bullet screamed one thing: for the elite only. And Riley Quinn, with her faded jacket and old wooden rifle, seemed like a blot of ink on a flawless diamond canvas. Lanes 6 and 8, the honorary lanes, usually reserved for top-tier internal matches or prestigious international guests. Today, they were for Riley, and for the public humiliation that had already been rehearsed. She's going to snap that trigger in half, Brandon Shaw sneered, watching as Riley set her Mungarand on the shooting bench. A metallic ting sounded. Someone dropped an old bullet casing near her feet. Avery Lennox, never one to miss a jab, smirked and said, "The only thing older than that rifle is probably her skills. They're not shooting," Riley thought, "but they're throwing. Every word, every stare, every gesture, things that seem light, but hit like stone." Dr. Miranda Steele appeared behind Riley, heels clicking like a gavel striking judgment. "You know," she began, voice laced with condescending concern, "Strathmore is for cultivating talent, not emotional experiments." She glanced quickly at the rifle. "That piece is an artifact. Are you preserving tradition or just too broke to upgrade?" Riley didn't respond. She calmly wiped the scope, hands steady like a craftsman polishing an heirloom. "Every word they throw sharpens my focus. They don't realize they're helping me prepare." On the live stream screens hanging around the facility, online viewers had started to split into two camps. Half cheered for Jackson, like a living legend. The other half, not yet believing in Riley, but growing curious. "She's really using that thing. Must be trying to become this year's meme." But her eyes don't flinch. Jackson Whitmore entered lane 6, checking his rifle with the finesse of a seasoned pro. He loaded his mag, adjusted the laser scope, then turned to the crowd, raising a hand in a showman's salute, like a warrior climbing Olympus. The spotlight hit the sleek black body of his gun, silver-engraved name, manufacturer's logo custom, built for military billionaires. And Riley, GE, she stood still, no scope, no accessories, just wood, steel, and the memory of her father who once said, "Don't let the weapon speak for your heart. You decide where the bullet goes." Live stream display, 47,000 viewers now watching live. Riley vs. Jackson began trending. A facility manager whispered into a mic, "Prepare to record a new record. Jackson's about to beat his last score." Jackson smirked and glanced at lane 8. "You might want to record this," he said, voice smooth like smoke. "At least your mom will have something to watch after you're gone." Riley touched the rifle's stock. No one saw her eyes glisten, not from fear, but from remembering her father. "I'm here, Dad. And this time, they won't silence me." The entire training hall seemed to freeze as Jackson Whitmore raised his weapon. No one dared breathe. No one blinked. The overhead lights bounced off his precision scope, casting the scene like a war movie. His hands were stable, his breath rhythmic, a body made for one thing, hitting bullseyes. He's a machine, someone whispered. No one shoots like Jackson. Shot one. The trigger snapped like a piano key. 10.0, perfect score. Digital boards lit up like fireworks. Applause erupted instinctively. Shot 2, 9.9, off by 0.1 millimeters. The crowd still roared. Shots 3, 4, 5, 10.0, 9.8, 10.0. Jackson smirked, his eyes radiating victory. At that moment, he wasn't just a shooter. He was the chosen one, the golden child of the system. At lane 8, Riley Quinn remained still, her hand resting on the mungarand. Like on a Bible, she didn't look at Jackson or the crowd, only at the distant target, a round circle hanging in the spotlight, barely the size of a coin. They clap for every one of his shots, but they'll hold their breath for mine. Shot 6, 7, 8, 10.0, 9.9, 10.0. With each bullet slicing through the air, Strathmore erupted, cheering, screaming, and gripping live stream phones. He's breaking the record. Forget that girl. He's the real deal. Shot 9, 10.0. Jackson straightened, turned, and bowed slightly like an Olympian finishing a flawless routine. Your turn, Quinn, he said, walking to his seat and brushing imaginary dust from his shoulder. No pressure, sweetheart. Riley stepped up. No applause. No movement. They came to watch me break. They don't know what they're really about to see. She laid her rifle down and checked the chamber, wiped the scope gently with her sleeve, left hand steadying the stock like an old friend, right hand lifted, finger resting on the trigger like touching a memory. They laughed. Now, it's time for silence. The entire VSIP range sank into an eerie stillness. No more mockery, no more whistles, just one sound, click, the mungarand's safety locking in. She lowered her body, adjusted the buttstock, straight back, eyes closed for a few seconds. One deep breath, not to beat Jackson, but so Dad will be proud, so Mom won't have to cry silently through a screen, so I can stand tall for myself. First shot. Riley pulled the trigger. The bullet hissed through the air. Ping. Scoreboard 10.0. No one said a word. A whisper came from the corner. Must have been luck. Second shot. Ping. 10.0. Something began to shift. Phones that were previously raised to record a public embarrassment now slowly turned back toward her lane. Third shot. Ping. 10.0. A soft melody played through the speaker system, a celebratory tune for 3 perfect shots in a row. Sienna Ray blinked. Brandon Shaw stopped laughing. Avery Lennox bit her lip. Fourth shot. Ping. 10.0. The melody grew louder. Jackson, seated with legs crossed in casual arrogance, began to lift his gaze. His eyes narrowed slightly. No way. Fifth shot. Ping. 10.0. A coffee cup slipped from someone's hand. The crash echoed across the range, but no one turned. All eyes were on lane 8. Sixth shot. Ping. 10.0. Livestream chat erupted. Who is this girl? This is insane. Hashtag Riley Quinn. Hashtag unstoppable. Global viewers surged like a tidal wave. Seventh shot. Ping. On 10.0. Sienna lowered her rifle scope, lips trembling. Brandon bowed his head, unable to speak. Jackson stood, hands clenched, jaw tight. Eighth shot. Ping. 10.0. Dr. T. Miranda Steele, standing behind Riley, curled her hand as if to say something, but the words died in her throat. Every word they used to crush me is now turning back to pierce them. Ninth shot. Ping. 10.0, a retired general who once declared, "She doesn't even know how to hold a rifle," stood frozen like a statue, eyes locked. Jackson gripped his own rifle strap. Sweat began to bead on his forehead. 10th shot. She inhaled, exhaled, cheek pressed to the stock, pulled the trigger. Ping. Out. 10.0. 10 shots. Perfect. 100/100ths. Facility record broken. The entire range fell into absolute silence. No one knew what to do. No one had ever seen anything like it. Riley stood up, set the rifle aside, lifted her head. Her gaze swept across the stunned crowd. Every face once mocking her now lowered in shame. "My father, Major Declan Quinn," she said, voice steady and low, "taught me to shoot when I was 6. He didn't train me to win medals. He trained me to survive and to stand tall, even when the world tried to force me to bow." 10 shots, 10 perfect scores, a shattered record. The silence wasn't confusion, it wasn't doubt. It was the sound of reality crumbling. Brandon Shaw stared at the scoreboard, as if blinking might make it vanish. Sienna Ray, the fashionista shooter, no longer looked glamorous under the LED lights. She removed her leather gloves, eyes fixated on Riley, as if she were seeing a ghost. At the far end, Dr. Miranda Steele clenched her documents so tightly the pages crumpled. She searched for a word to discredit Riley, but her throat was dry, and then the first clap rang out. Slow, way, firm, alternito. Commander Ron Beckett, former Marine, the man who once scoffed "she doesn't know what she's doing," was the first to rise. Each clap from him struck like a hammer on the pride of the entire facility. Second clap, third. Then the dam broke. The whole room erupted into a storm of applause, thunderous, overwhelming, with nothing held back. Riley stood at the center of it all, but she said nothing. She didn't need to. She bowed her head slightly, as if to say every word she needed to speak had already been delivered. Through each of those 10 bullets, "Thank you, Dad," she whispered inside. "No one defended me, but now they've heard me, not through words, but through the rhythm of my heart." Jackson Whitmore was still standing. His arms hung limp at his sides. His face no longer carried broken arrogance, but genuine disbelief. His eyes locked on Riley, trying to understand how a girl with an old rifle, dusty shoes, and no designer label had just shattered every definition of elite. In under 3 minutes, across the wall mounted screens, new record, Riley Quinn, 100/100ths, standard redefined, Riley Quinn legend, trending globally. Online viewers flooded the feed. "Who is she? She's not a legend. She's reality. I cried over a bullet. This is madness." Director Silas Merrick, head of the facility, emerged from the command room. His silver hair glowed under the lights. His voice rolled like a judge's verdict. "I've witnessed many things in my 40 years at Strathmore, but today, this is the first time I've seen something like this." He paused, looked Riley straight in the eye. "Riley Quinn, you didn't just break a record. You rewrote this facility's standards." A collective breath passed through the room. Director Merrick turned to the trainers, staff, and members who had mocked her. "From this moment on, anyone who participated in insulting, discriminating, or publicly humiliating Ms. Quinn, including staff, instructors, and members, will be suspended pending character review." A collective gasp. Dr. Steele stepped back, face pale. Logan Price, the front gate guard who blocked Riley, lowered his head in shame. The digital display changed. A digital plaque lit up across the range. "Riley Quinn, 100/100ths, record holder, Strathmore Elite Range. You don't need a crown to be royalty. You just need to aim true." The entire hall stood in reverent silence before that plaque, as if in front of a monument. A girl, no brand, no connections, no marketing campaign, just an old rifle and a heart that never missed its mark. The room remained still, but it wasn't the stillness of shock anymore. It was the stillness that came when Justice walked in, wearing a faded jacket. Riley Quinn stepped away from the firing lane. No triumphant stride, no hands raised in victory, just silence, as beautiful as an unwritten symphony, echoing longer than any speech. Jackson Whitmore was still there, his arms hung loose, eyes following her, as if trying to retrace every second that had just unfolded. But none of it made sense anymore. His $60,000 rifle, once the centerpiece of admiration, now looked like a toy in the presence of her faded wooden Mungarand. I was wrong. He didn't say the words out loud, but they pulsed in every staggered heartbeat within him. From the spectator rows Sienna Ray, the same woman who had mocked, "This isn't a cosplay arena," quietly packed up her rifle scope, hands trembling. For the first time, she was no longer the fashion shooter, but simply a girl realizing she had misjudged someone far greater than herself. Brandon Shaw turned and walked away, ears flushed with the shameful buzz of a live stream gone viral. His original caption, "She's the national joke," was now being edited across the internet to "National Joke, Symbol of Truth." Avery Lennox, who had thrown Riley's score sheet at her feet, now silently stooped to pick it up. No one told her to. She did it because her conscience wouldn't let her walk away unchanged. Across the digital scoreboard, the phrase "Standard Redefined" still glowed like a sacred engraving, piercing the pride of everyone who had once mocked her. Then Jackson finally stepped toward Riley. No one moved. The entire room held its breath, waiting for something never before witnessed. A man once crowned King of Strathmore, now approaching a girl he had dismissed as a nobody. He stood before her. No smirk, no smugness, only truth and the shattering of ego. "I'm an idiot," he finally said. "I was wrong. The moment I looked at that old coat." His voice cracked, his eyes glistened, not from tears exactly, but from the weight of seeing, for the first time, the strength of silence and the true power of presence. "You didn't just outshoot me. You outclassed me in every way." Riley didn't respond. She simply looked at him, eyes sharp like a bullet. But she didn't fire. She just held the moment. Then she smiled, a small smile, but it made Jackson flinch slightly, as his heart had shifted out of place. "They didn't know me, but now they'll never forget me." Director Merrick stepped forward, voice firm and clear. "From this day on, Strathmore's gold standard is no longer Jackson Whitmore. It is Riley Quinn." Jackson didn't protest. He simply nodded, quietly, one, accepting, and then he clapped. 1 beat, 2, when Lyle's 3, the entire facility erupted once again, not out of surprise this time, but out of true respect. That day, Strathmore Elite Range didn't just witness a shooting match. It witnessed a historical shift, a quiet revolution, born from an old rifle and a girl who no one even greeted at the gate. Around the world, the hashtag Riley Quinn overtook political headlines. The range's livestream reached over 8 million views in just 24 hours. From military academies to women's sports clubs, from survival forums to equality blogs, everyone talked about the girl in the faded coat with the Mungarand. A news reporter asked, "Where did she come from? Why have we never heard of her? And how did she shoot like that?" The answer was simple: silence, persistence, and truth that could no longer be hidden. At Strathmore, the next day, the leaderboard was updated. Riley Quinn's name now shone at the very top. Below it were the names of those who had once belittled her, now marked for review. Dr. Toll. Miranda Steele was officially suspended from teaching. Logan Price, the gatekeeper who denied Riley entry, was replaced, and a new training initiative was announced, skills program for the overlooked and underrated. And the first invited instructor, Riley Quinn. Jackson Whitmore didn't return to the shooting lanes for 2 weeks, and when he finally did, no one dared mock him. He didn't shoot. He didn't show off his rifle. He didn't live stream. He simply stood quietly in the far corner of the training room, watching Riley as she guided a small boy on how to hold a rifle. One afternoon, after the session ended, Jackson approached her. No crowd, no cameras, just 2 people who had once stood on opposite sides of pride. "You're still here," he said. His voice wasn't steady, but it was sincere. "Even after making them all bow, you're still as quiet as if nothing happened." Riley looked at him, her gaze deep like an autumn afternoon. "I didn't come here to make anyone bow," she replied. "I just came to stand tall for myself." A long silence stretched between them. Then he spoke again. "I didn't think I'd ever admire anyone the way I admire you now, and maybe that's what's changing me." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "Change doesn't need anyone's permission," she said. "It just needs honesty." That night, Jackson sent her a message. "Do you like coffee? Not the kind for business meetings or sponsorship deals. Just coffee." And between 2 people, one who used to be an idiot and one who used to be silent, she replied with just one symbol. Weeks later, in a photo taken secretly by a bystander, Riley and Jackson were seen sitting together at a small outdoor cafe. No rifles, no tactical coats, no scoreboards, just 2 people and soft laughter, and that was enough. 3 months after the day the shooting world was turned upside down, a new honor plaque was installed at Strathmore. Not a glittering lead board like the old ones, not a gold-engraved panel like the corporate sponsors wanted, just a dark bronze plate, deeply hand-etched with these words: Riley Quinn, 100-100, facility record. She didn't shoot to win. She shot to remind the world who it had forgotten. That day, the motto of Strathmore Elite Range was changed from "Precision defines power" to "Character defines legacy." Riley declined every sponsorship deal, every invitation to promote weapons, shooting games, and even prime-time talk shows. She simply said, "I didn't come here to become a brand. I came here to keep a promise to my father." Instead of showcasing her victory, she opened free weekend training sessions, teaching those who had once been overlooked, young girls from rural towns, old veterans left behind, and kids who had once been laughed at for trembling hands on their first try. Jackson Whitmore was no longer Strathmore's central figure. He stepped back, becoming technical support for Riley's classes. No longer on the stage, he stood beside her, quietly, learning how to aim again, this time not to conquer, but to understand. 1 year later, they got married. No grand wedding, no headline tabloids, just around 30 close friends and family gathered around an old shooting range, the very one where Riley once trained with her father. She wore a simple white dress. Jackson slipped on a silver ring, etched with the words, "I learned to aim by watching you stand still, Mrs." Quinn sat in the front row, tears flowing, but her face radiant with pride. Her daughter, once mocked by the world, now stood tall, needing to prove nothing to anyone. After the ceremony, as the guests began to leave, Riley returned alone to Lane 8. Her Mungarand lay on the wooden bench, well-maintained yet still bearing the scratch on the stock, where her father had once carved the name, Quinn. "Come." She lifted the rifle, aimed toward the distant target, but she didn't fire. She just stood there. For a long while, the wind blew gently, A golden leaf drifted to the ground. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, striking the engraved letters on the stock, now joined by a new inscription beneath it. R. Quinn, not just a shooter, a voice. The camera pulls back slowly, from Riley's face to the entire training field, a place that had once been a fortress of exclusion, now transformed into a sanctuary of fairness and hope. Text appears on screen. No one has to be born perfect to become legendary. You just have to refuse to back down, even when the whole world laughs. This story isn't about guns. It's about courage, about silence that's harder than steel, and about a girl who stood alone, fired 10 shots, and made the entire world go quiet. She didn't come to defeat anyone. She came to remind the world that worth isn't wrapped in brands, isn't worn on the surface, and isn't measured by noise, but in the stillness of a heart that never yields. Riley Quinn, a name that doesn't need to be shouted, because what she left behind is an echo that will live on through every bullet, every gaze, and every soul that's ever been underestimated. If you've ever been misjudged, if you've ever been laughed at for not fitting someone else's standard, remember this: sometimes all it takes is one moment where you stand your ground, and the whole world has no choice but to step back and listen to your silence. Signed, Riley, not the best, but the one who didn't back down. As the world tried to box her in, Riley Quinn never raised her voice. She never fought with insults. She never demanded attention. She just walked forward, with a rifle and a promise, 10 bullets, 10 heartbeats, and a message that will outlive every name on the wall. They mocked her jacket. They mocked her silence. They mocked her past. But they couldn't mock her legacy, for what she brought to Strathmore was not just skill, it was a mirror, a reflection of everything the system tried to forget: honor without privilege, strength without status, power without arrogance. And for every person watching, whether online or quietly in the corners of life, Riley's story became more than just a shooting match. It became a blueprint for every underdog, every quiet soul, every heart that's ever been told, "You don't belong here." Her story said back, "You do, and you always did." Aftermath. Riley continued to lead free training sessions. She taught not just how to shoot, but how to stand, breathe, and not flinch when the world is loud. Jackson never tried to reclaim the spotlight. Instead, he learned to listen, to support, and to stand next to, not ahead of. Together, they turned the arena that once excluded her into a sanctuary for those who had been told, "You'll never make it." But she did. Not through noise, not through anger, but through stillness and purpose. And the legend of Lane 8 lives on, not because of what she wore, not because of what she broke, but because she reminded the world true power doesn't scream, it stands still and lets the silence speak. Across the world, her story echoed not just in shooting ranges, but in classrooms, in war veterans' halls, in community centers tucked into forgotten neighborhoods. Riley Quinn had become more than a name. She was a movement. Bloggers wrote about her. Podcasts featured her in episodes titled "The Girl Who Silenced the Giants." Women in underserved regions started self-defense workshops, citing her as the reason they believed they could. She never asked for that. She never built a brand. She simply kept showing up, week after week, to teach those who had once been invisible. Her students ranged from 10-year-old girls who flinched at loud noises to 70-year-old war veterans who had lost their grip, not on the rifle, but on their confidence. And every week, Riley would say, "You're not here to shoot like me. You're here to remember that your hands are steady, your breath is strong, and your voice doesn't need volume to be heard." At the entrance to the new wing of Strathmore, where she now taught, there was no flashy banner, No security guards, just a bronze plaque etched with her handwriting. If you've ever been left out, step in. This door was made for you. One afternoon, a young girl named Amira walked in, tiny, nervous, wearing a hand-me-down jacket too big for her frame. She looked at Riley and whispered, "They said I wasn't strong enough to be here." Riley knelt down, looked her straight in the eyes. "Then let's show them what strength actually looks like." That day, Amira fired her first shot. It didn't hit the bullseye, but it hit something else, something deeper, a belief, a beginning. Meanwhile, Jackson Whitmore, once the star, now stood by the doors each day, greeting every student who entered with nothing but respect. He became the quiet protector of that space. If anyone raised an eyebrow at a girl's old jacket or a boy's trembling hands, Jackson would simply say, "You might want to watch Lane 8 before you speak." And they did, again and again, because Lane 8 wasn't just a number anymore. It was a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the most legendary moments don't come from noise, lights, or gold, but from a girl who said nothing and let her hands speak. News crews came, interview requests poured in. Riley declined them all. "The story was never about me," she told director Merrick. "It's about anyone who's ever walked through a door they weren't supposed to open and walked in anyway." And at Strathmore's annual award gala, the final slide of the night wasn't a graph. It wasn't a statistic. It was a still image. Riley Quinn, kneeling beside Amira, guiding her arms gently as she lined up her shot. Below is one sentence: "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing still when the world tells you to run." Months passed. The world moved on, as it always does. New records were set. New names lit up digital boards. New brands came and went, promising the next big thing. But through all the noise, one name quietly remained: Riley Quinn. Not because she kept competing, not because she chased attention, but because people remembered her in moments when they felt small, in job interviews where they were dismissed for how they looked, in classrooms where they didn't raise their hands because they were afraid to be wrong, in streets where silence seemed safer than standing up. They remembered the girl in the faded green coat, the old rifle, the 10 perfect shots, and how she never said a word to those who mocked her, until she made them listen. One quiet evening, well after sunset, Jackson found Riley once again at Lane 8. She wasn't holding a rifle this time, just standing there, their hands in her pockets, eyes fixed on the same distant target. "You miss it?" he asked gently. She didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "No, I didn't come here to shoot forever. I came here to finish something my father started." She paused, then added, "And now, it's done." He nodded. They stood in silence. Two people who once represented opposite sides of a world that measured worth in trophies, labels, and bloodlines, now standing side by side, watching the dusk melt into darkness. "What now?" he finally asked. Riley turned to him, a quiet smile in her eyes. "Now, we make sure the next girl in a faded coat doesn't have to fight as hard just to be seen." Months later, a small group of strangers gathered around the bronze plaque at Strathmore. Some had flown across the country. Some had walked there from nearby neighborhoods. They touched the metal, traced the engraving, and whispered, "I needed this." Across the world, Lane 8 became shorthand, not for shooting, but for resilience, in whispered conversations between daughters and fathers, between teachers and students, between mentors and the ones no one believed in. "Remember Lane 8, they'd say. That's where silence defeated noise, where legacy wasn't inherited, it was earned." Riley never sought a spotlight, but in her absence, the world shined it for her. Books were written, podcasts told her story, even a children's picture book was released. titled The Girl Who Stood Still. Its final page simply read, "She didn't roar, she didn't run, she stood, and the world had to change around her. In a quiet home tucked between trees, Riley lives now, away from the cameras. She teaches children how to breathe before they speak, and how to stay steady when the world shakes. And sometimes, late at night, when the wind is soft and the past feels near, she takes out the old Mungarond. She doesn't shoot it. She just runs her fingers along the stock, over the names D, Quinn, Win, R, but Quinn, Win, not just a shooter, a voice. And if you ever feel overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten, stand still, even if your voice shakes, because the world may laugh at you now, but it only takes one moment, one shot, one breath, for everything to change, just like it did for the girl in the green coat who said nothing and made the whole world listen.